Okay, good morning. This is going to be our first tutorial into using After Effects. In order to have access to After Effects, you're going to need to have a license to Adobe Creative Cloud. We're not going to be using only After Effects in this course. We will also be using Illustrator, and it's good to have Photoshop and Premiere as well. So I just Googled Adobe Creative Cloud for students here. And you can get a membership. It's $20 a month. I have a lot of programs running, so this is going to take a little bit of time, but click on it and hit buy, and then you can have access to the Creative Cloud. Now we have, once you have access to the Creative Cloud, you can have, you can open the app here and go ahead and download After Effects to your computer. This takes about a half an hour to download. It will also download with it the media encoder, which is also what we need. We're going to want to maybe download Photoshop and Illustrator if you don't already have those, but we definitely want to first download After Effects so we have this available on our computer. And I'm going to go ahead and open it. This is the home screen. We can X out of this, but if you wanted to learn more and do some Adobe crafted tutorials about After Effects, you can find a bunch of tutorials here under the Learn tab. But I'm going to get rid of that home tab. And then what I have here is our main interface for After Effects. Let me go over our interface here. We can go to Window, and under Window we see all of these check boxes, and this is showing us which panels are open on in our workspace. And I can use our Window workspace drop-down menu here to change the format of this flexible interface. So I can change it to something like Paint, or I can change it to minimal, right? But for our purposes, I'm just going to use the default workspace. Now, if I want, I can also change the type of workspace here by clicking these three little lines, right? And then I can change this workspace or save a new workspace. And I should be able to, this just tells me which workspace I'm working in here. All right, what I have on the left is our project panel. And our project panel is where all of our assets, all of our compositions, any files that we've brought into our project will all populate here. Next to the project window is the composition window. And this composition window allows us to preview our compositions. Compositions are empty containers into which we put layers, and those layers have digital content, and then we can animate. We can add keyframes and animate them. Next to that, there's a bunch of other drawers here. Most important one for us in the future will be the effects and presets. Also, if you're using text, we have the character panel and the paragraph panel that are embedded within the side panel. And then at the very bottom, I have my timeline. So on this side of the timeline, we will have all of our layers that our composition is constructed of, and then to the right of that, we have the timeline. So there are a couple ways to start a new composition. Oh, also at the top, we have a toolbar with a bunch of tools. So we can start a new composition because everything we do in After Effects will result in compositions. We can nest compositions within each other, and within compositions, we will have layers that will have footage or have different elements embedded in it. So I can create a new composition here, or this is because I have no compositions in my scene, these two buttons are available to me. I can do it this way, new composition, and then I have my composition settings. 1920 by 1080 is a really large HD file size. I'm actually going to recommend that, since this is student work, that we use this one here, this first preset, which is HDV 720. So this is 1280 by 720, which is definitely a large enough resolution, a high enough resolution for the work that we're going to be doing in our class. If you think that you want to be submitting any of this work to film festivals or animation festivals or anything of that nature, then you would want to have this be 1080. The other things here are the frame rate. 29.97 is fine. This is kind of a standard digital video frame rate. For film, we're really working with 24 frames per second, but here we'll do 2997 is fine. And then at the bottom, we have our duration. And our duration of this particular composition is 30 seconds. So whenever I'm creating a new composition, I want to make sure that I have my height and my width are set. I don't want to really mess with this, but I definitely don't really want to mess with the frame rate after I start to edit, after I start to animate. So make these settings now. Choose this preset for all of your compositions, and then go ahead, and duration of 30 seconds is fine for this demo. Go ahead and click OK. So now what you'll see is we have a composition that has been created, comp 1, that we just created, which is that empty container. It looks like it's black, but in my composition panel here, if I go to this button, and if I hover over any icon, it will tell me what it is, toggle transparency. Here, black just indicates transparent. And now we have in our timeline, I have comp 1. And there's nothing in comp 1. It is just an empty container at this time. Some other things about our composition panel, which are important to note, is that here I'm able to change. Right now I have fit up to 100%, and it's telling me what my zoom is here. There's some things that we don't necessarily need to be worried about, like this VR. This is some kind of VR immersive thing we don't have to worry about. But each of these icons that take snapshots, you can take a kind of screenshot on what you're doing. This is how you can jump ahead in the timeline. And then this is for resolution. Show channel and color management settings, but here resolution, if you're having trouble previewing, because what's going to end up happening is you see this green line here on our timeline. This is the render cache, meaning that it's processing the movement that we have in our composition. It's processing it in real time, and so sometimes it's hard to preview something. We can cut down that resolution temporarily, just visually in our comp panel, to see only half of the resolution, to see generally if the motion is what we like or not. Right now it's to full and auto, so it will, under auto, it will kind of adjust that resolution as it's trying to process all of the elements that we have, all of the layers that we have, and all of the motion that's going on in those layers. So that's kind of a general overview of some of these tools here within our composition panel. I can go ahead and like rename this comp if I want. If I right click, I should be able to rename it. Oh, that's something important. If I double click on any of my panels, they will make it full. It'll make it full screen. Down here, I should be able to right click and rename. On my other computer to let me do that, but here it won't. So let me go ahead and I can go to composition settings here. That's another way that I can go back if I need to adjust any of my composition settings or need to review what they are, and I can change my composition name if I so choose, but I'm going to leave it as comp 1 for now. So comp 1, another way that we can add compositions into our scene. If I delete this, I will get this back again, but so I can do new composition from footage, and what that will do is it will pull up my import menu. Okay, I still have comp 1 here. So let me go ahead and go in, so I can do it that way, or I can go file, that's, you know, if I don't have a composition already in my scene, or I can go to file import, and then I'm going to import a file. So what I've already done in my computer, let me go ahead and cancel this for a second. This is really important. It's really important to have a project folder designated for the work you're going to be doing. So I've already created in my documents folder a folder called this year, and then our course. And then within our course folder for this demo, and maybe future demos, I don't know, I've started to put within my project folder footage that I'm going to use. So I have a Photoshop file, and I have an MOV file, or a video file. So what I'd like to do actually is, before I import either of those into my After Effects, I'm going to go back to After Effects, and I'm going to save this as, and I'm going to save it to that folder. I'm just going to call this demo. Okay, and so now if I go File and Import, Files, here we are. I have I can import this, and I'm going to import it as footage, but I also want to create a composition out of it. I'm going to say okay. So now what I have in my project panel here is I have the original QuickTime file. I have the original video file. And then I also have a composition that's been created from that video file. So that's how you can create a composition from footage. Now let me go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to import file. And I'm going to import this Photoshop file. I'm going to import it as footage. And I want, oh, okay, since I'm importing it as footage, it's only going to allow me to choose one layer. So let me import this as a composition, and I'm going to say editable layer styles. Okay, so now what I've done with I've imported that Photoshop file as a composition. Let me go and show you that Photoshop file. In Photoshop. Right, I've created some shapes. I have a background and some shapes, so I have 4 layers here in my Photoshop file. And within After Effects, what we have here is we have a folder that has those Photoshop files. Okay, they have all of my layers. So the difference, so here's all the layers here that I have that are editable. I can go back into my Photoshop file, and I can edit my Photoshop file, and then it will update here. So let's see, Photoshop. And what I can do here is if I have my Photoshop layers, I'm going to drag these into Comp 1. And I'm going to readjust the, and now you see the layers here have been populated into Comp 1. Ah, I don't have to do that. See, here they are. So I have Photoshop composition. This is funny. So what it's done is it's created kind of a number of compositions that I don't necessarily need. I'm going to delete Photoshop 2 and just have Photoshop. And in Comp 1, I don't need to do this. I'm going to delete those. I'll do something else with Comp 1. So in my Photoshop composition, if I double click, and now you can see here in my timeline, I have my Comp 1, I have all the comps here, and I can just click on them and I can bounce through them. Oh, I didn't want to delete Photoshop 2, did I? Let me go back. Let me delete this. I guess I need it. I don't know. Let me see. Photoshop 1. Photoshop. Delete this one. There we go. So in my Photoshop composition now, I have a bunch of different layers here. And you can see that they're editable. Right? I can move all of these elements around. So I can create compositions. I can create Photoshop files that have layers, and then I can bring them into After Effects, and I can use these as assets in After Effects to animate. I can move these things around. And this, again, this Photoshop composition is only 30 seconds long. I can go to my composition settings and maybe change this if I'd like to be 1 minute instead. It really depends on how long you want your animation to be. So in layers, what we have here is we can make layers visible or not using these this little icon here of the eyeball. I can lock layers if I don't want to be able, right now I'm able to move the background. If I'd like to not be able to move the background, I can lock that layer. And then if I have so many layers in my composition and I just want to be able to only be working within the interface with particular layers, I can go to solo those layers. So if I only want to work with the shapes and I don't want to see or I don't want to see the background, I can use this solo button here. And then we'll get into some of these other options a little bit in a future tutorial. So something that's good to do in your project folder is to create folders. So I might create a folder called compositions. And I'm going to create another folder called footage. And then I'm going to drop my footage into my footage folder. And I'm going to drop my compositions into my compositions folder. Okay. And so that's just going to keep everything organized. So let me go back to comp 1. And I don't want these layers in it. Comp 1 was that original comp that I made, which is just the empty shell. If you have a 3-button mouse, you can right click, or if you don't, you can go up to layer and you can create new. And then there's a bunch of ways that you can create layers with content in them just within After Effects. So I might put a solid background in and I can choose a color. Maybe I'll choose a kind of light pink color and say, okay. And so now I have a medium solid. You see here in my project folder, I have another folder that's been created called solids. So I've created this medium solid. This is just a kind of background. It's just a rectangle shape. There's not too much you can do with a solid, but it can give you a background. I might lock that layer if I want, and then I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. Maybe I'll make some text. If I go and select this text and go to my character panel here, I can change the size of that text and the color of it. I can change its spacing. I can change its the text height. You know, I can adjust everything about the text that I'd like. Okay, and it's been populated here in my composition timeline down here for comp 1, and I have now another layer here. And then you see in our timeline another track in our timeline. So some of the tools up here, if I go to my selection tool, I'm able to move this element around my composition. And we'll get into keyframe animation in the future. I'm not going to get into it in this. We'll get into it next week, how to start to keyframe. This is another way to create a new composition here, or to create a new folder, or to interpret footage, to import footage. So there's these icons here. You can delete them here. If we don't like anything, we can also just hit delete on our keyboard. I can nest compositions within each other. I can like drag this composition here as a layer in my comp 1. So now and because it's under my solid, I'm not able to see it, but it's there. I can like drag and rearrange these, the order of this by picking on this, clicking the source name and dragging it. Because this composition was created from the footage, let's go to its composition settings. I just right click there, but I can go to composition settings there as well. So this has a 1920 by 1080. Those are the dimensions are different than my composition itself. So that's why when I can zoom out here, you can see kind of outline that this piece of footage is larger. I can use these little boxes, you know, to adjust the size. If I hit, and now you can see, because I'm changing something, do you see that resolution? I can't really click on it right now, but the resolution has changed to a quarter value as I'm starting to adjust the size of this. So I can do this kind of I can work with this intuitively, adjusting the parameters, the properties of these layers. I can work with them in my comp panel here. And, you know, I can like drag this around if I want. And if I hit space bar, now we'll have a preview here of the moving image elements of this video footage. Okay, so we can start to preview, and you'll see now I have my render cache here. Okay. So that's really the basics of After Effects. I'm going to go ahead and file and save. I would review maybe this tutorial one more time, watch it twice, and then go ahead and start to create your own assets, start to create your own Photoshop files perhaps, or start to compile some video footage that you might want to use or at least play around with as we're going through these different tutorials. Okay. So so now that I've kind of created this one comp, right? And so now I might have, this might be like my final comp, right? Comp 1. This is where we're going to have, since we can nest compositions within each other, you can create individual comps and then compile them all together at the end. So this is my final comp here for today, and I'm going to go File and Export, and I'm going to add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. And now I'm just going to run you through the pipeline, basically, of how I want you to be sharing your work with us. And because it's the first time that this user on my computer is opening Adobe Media Encoder, it might take a minute. I'd like to say that if you have any questions, I'll open up a forum on Canvas for asking questions, so that if the group has similar questions or if somebody from the group can answer the questions, that would be great. But I will be responding to those questions that you post there, and then I'm always available for just one-on-one Zoom meetings as kind of office hours if you want to do some screen sharing. So I know we're all coming into this course with different skill sets and different levels of kind of computer literacy and working with animation software. So if you have a question, don't be shy and please ask it. So now I have my Adobe Media Encoder, and it'll pop up shortly. Okay, here it is. And this is just a separate program outside of After Effects that helps to render out our projects. So I'm just going to wait, and then we'll see in our queue here, we will have our comp will pop up. There it is. And now what we see here is that it's comp 1, the output file. So for my After Effects composition 1, I am going to stick with this format, H.264. If I need to change it, I can change it here. There's a number of different formats, but we want this H.264. We want to match the source, but we can choose a different. I wouldn't choose a different one. This will be the same. This, Vimeo 720 HD is fine, but this is already at 720 HD. And then it's saying the output file here. And what you can, if you click on it, you can change the output file. But if you've created your project folder, now we'll create, this is kind of where all of our renders will render out to. So it's already done that for us. And now you can see that it's just named at the name of the composition.mp4, which is fine. And I'm going to go ahead and press this little green play button, and now it's going to encode or render our animation. We have a little output preview down here that you'll see will pop up momentarily. So something to be aware of is that this will take a little bit of time. Right now I'm just rendering a very simple composition, only one of them, and it's taking a couple minutes. So this isn't the kind of, we're gonna have to, it's not 3D animation yet, but it does take time. So plan for that time. Try to have your projects done a couple days before they're due so that you can troubleshoot any potential, technical difficulties you may encounter. One of them may be that it takes a while to encode or render what you intend to submit. Go to my Finder here and still working on it. But you can see in my project folder now I have my MP4 file, which is my rendered animation, well, my little simple composition I've created. And now there it is. So if I want to share this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a Vimeo account. Or if you already have a YouTube account, that's fine. But I would recommend using Vimeo because this is how artists share their work more often than with YouTube. So you might find a better community here on Vimeo than on YouTube. And there's also no ads, and there's no suggested anything at the end, which is nice. And then what I'm going to do after I've created if you need help creating a Vimeo account or a YouTube account, let me know. I'm just going to upload this. I'm going to go to upload. And I'm not going to really upload it, but I'm going to find that file here. Okay, and I'm going to cancel this, but it'll upload and then it will process. And when it's done processing, it will show up here in your list of videos. If you go to your account, little icon there, and go to videos, you'll see all of your videos. And then you can click on any of them, or you can, and then it will bring you to your page here. You can hit share, and you want to copy the embed code. Okay. Now, when we go to our canvas, and I'm going to scroll ahead here to an unpublished week 5, and we'll have our project 1 critique. So you don't have to submit anything to our projects. Don't submit anything. So I'm not going to download any really large files anymore. What we're going to do instead to submit your project is to go to the critique discussion board, hit reply, and then you're going to insert an embed, and then you'll paste that embed code. Hit submit, and now it's been embedded, and you can just post your reply there. So that's it for this week. If you have any questions, again, email me, and that should really get you started. So please download After Effects and start to pull some footage together, create an organized project folder for yourself, and then we'll be ready to go next week, and we'll have an in-depth tutorial on how to begin keyframe animation and working with properties in the layers.